And on this episode of Energy Facts Chats, I'm sitting with Mike Umbro. We're discussing his Don't Say Oil presentation that he gave last week at SIPES and why domestic production is so important, not just for the country, but for also the entire world and the environment of the entire world. Mike, what else you got?
You know, it's a big topic, but we need to come together as an industry and start imploring our leaders to talk about the facts around the benefits of our energy production in California or the entire country as a whole, because we're all one energy industry and we need to come together and look at what's happening in each of our basins and come together and strategize and create a game plan to combat all the false narratives that are facing our industry right now, because the people are going to wake up when these prices continue to rise and energy continues to disappear from our availability. So it's time to wake up and start talking about it.
And they're going to be pissed when they wake up. So thanks for tuning in to Energy Facts Chats, and we'll see you soon. And welcome to another new Energy Facts Chats, episode 11, with me, your host, JP Warren, and my brother from California, Mike Umbro. Not my true brother, not my biological brother, but my energy bro. And I think that's stronger than blood sometimes.
Yeah,
Mike,
we're all energy brothers and sisters, right?
We're all, yes, exactly. And that's what we're trying to do, get a bigger family. So that's kind of where we're having this. And Mike was in town last week he came in town to have some meetings. He attended a crew club event up in the Wounds that we have. And I got to obviously rep my swag, because
that was a delicious dinner, good conversation.
Great conversation.
Successful crew club. That was fun.
And then the following day, and this is kind of where we're going to segue into kind of intro into today's conversation, is Mike gave a great presentation at the SIPES Houston lunch. And SIPES is a group of independent geologists and I guess finance people that cuts out the middleman for the straight deals to invest in oil and gas wells. And Mike, I thought your conversation was excellent. Can you hear me? Okay,
I can hear you good.
I
can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's been too long since we recorded once. That's kind of why I'm all over the board right now.
A little rust.
But Mike, you gave a great presentation and kind of do a little recap of these Energy Facts Chats. The whole goal of it is to kind of bridge energy expectations with energy realities. Right. Several of the previous episodes we discussed kind of the electricity generation, kind of what ingredients is that? Is that natural gas or renewables? And we looked all over the states and we discussed kind of the consumer, the impact to the consumers. And it's not a cool thing that we're seeing, but it's definitely a validating thing that we're seeing is the stuff that you and I talked about a month ago. We are seeing news reports and articles and about kind of what exactly we're talking about. Hey, consumers are going to be expecting higher prices because of this. This is why. And unfortunately, it's happening. We're seeing this today come to fruition. And we're also seeing there's articles like prices are on the rise. Fossil fuels are to blame. And that's the thing. I kind of want to step back away from this blame shifting and focus on, I guess, the environment and the situation versus like, oh, it's this person's fault or this group's fault. So that's kind of the whole goal of this, is to kind of have a energy reality conversation. And Mike, let's get this kicked off. I know I've been
sure.
I think that's 3 cups of coffee
there. Yeah.
I see the screen. Yeah. So what we're going to do, for today, we're going to kind of focus on the front side of his presentation that he gave at SIPES Houston, and we're going to have the Energy Facts Chats episode 12 and kind of go over the last half, because there's so much good information here, Mike, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you just coming in and just kind of informing people. So let's get this kicked off. So I'm gonna hand this off to you right now, Mike.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay.
Yeah, I see. I'm looking at, so I named it Don't Say Oil because kind of a good segue by you talking about, blame game and these energy crises are hitting, whether it's the grid or gasoline prices. And I believe the domestic oil and gas industry has failed to educate the general public on the tremendous benefits of affordable energy and availability. When will we find our voice? Is it already too late? So that's kind of the setup of this is, for many decades, we've relied on big oil companies to run our marketing campaigns and be our advocates. And oftentimes these big oil companies are easy to associate with environmental damages, with climate change, with everything that the mainstream media is just blaming on big oil and gas companies. And it's time for us as independents and just an industry as a whole to come together and talk about oil, and rather than not talking about it and kind of shying away from the public sphere. So we don't really need to look at my background other than, I believe in family, faith, and loyalty. And I think those are three attributes that we need to adopt as an industry, as a family, to bring brothers and sisters in this industry together and to spread that message. But this is a vision board that I put together. It was one of my final projects at Duke, which was an environmental leadership program and a master's in environmental management. But this is from 2019, and I haven't changed it since. And it says, I want to move people to participate in a collaborative energy transition that is focused on human rights, environmental stewardship, and a holistic global approach. And so I'll pause here, but I'll mention one thing I forgot to mention at SIPES. In this upper right corner, I have a little bubble that says comfort zone in yellow. And that's where I see our industry. We want to stay in our comfort zone. We want to be in our little industry meetings. We want to be in our little LinkedIn echo chambers. We want to just be comfortable. And we need to learn to step out of that, because there's an entire world out there, as kind of the bottom pictures portray, that we need to be talking about.
I think also to kind of segue into that too, you're right. I mean, there is a huge level of how we've communicated in the past, how we told our story, how we handle, population criticism of our industry, which I totally get. I completely get that. But I think right now with, the surge of whether it's social media, whether it's the surge of public perception and also the surge in kind of the falsehoods of energy. So I completely agree. I think it's even taken the steps of, and one thing that's kind of grinding my gears lately is this concept of energy transition, whether it's, you have the super majors talking about energy transition, you have, SPE talking about energy transition. And what's frustrating for me, and this is kind of a rant, and I want to continue to your story, but what's frustrating for me is we all know that it's not an energy transition we're up against. It's energy addition. And right. I really wish that as an industry, as a society, we would kind of lean back from and shy away from the energy transition into what it really is. It's an energy addition to all these new technologies that are coming out and these new and anyway, so that's kind of my rant. So I completely agree. And I think it's telling the stories and communicating that. I think one way to do that is you're not anyway. So I'm getting too far in the weeds. Anyway, so
no, it's a perfect segue, because what you're talking about, you're saying, hey, we still need all of these energy products. So shutting down our local industry is really just resulting in what you see on the bottom of this screen. We're getting 55 million barrels a year, we being California, from Ecuador, the rainforest, the most biodiverse ecosystem on the planet. We get 50 million barrels from Saudi. We get 50 million barrels from Iraq. We get 20 million barrels from Colombia. So it's exactly what you're talking about. It's an energy addition, but now instead of making it ourselves, we're turning to countries that have zero environmental or very little environmental regulations. And what is that causing? That's causing extreme environmental leakage into those communities. And then we're bringing it back in the dirtiest form of transportation, which is tankers that are run on bunker fuel. So rather than using clean pipelines, we're fouling our ports and all of our communities surrounding the ports. So I think it's a perfect segue to just say, hey, we're still using 20 million barrels a day in California. So what are we doing about it?
And so my question is, I'm seeing these, Ecuador, Saudi, Iraq, Colombia on this side, the thousands of barrels. How much is actually produced in California, domestically and produced? Could you have those numbers?
We're down to 25% of our 600 million barrel a year demand. We're down to 25% and dropping quickly. So we're probably, by the end of this year, since Gavin Newsom's taken office, we've lost 100,000 barrels a day of production. So we're going to be making somewhere around 150 million barrels a year as a state in a state that's consuming 600 million barrels a year.
And so I'm at a California coffee shop digging into vibes. I'm overhearing you talking about this. What does that mean to me? I mean, you're talking about reduce production, reduce this, reduce. What does that mean to me? I guess in the 30,000 foot view, if I'm overhearing this from you.
That's the main thing is how can we engage the general public? And I think sadly the general public is only engaged when there is a crisis, when gasoline hits. We saw it $7 a gallon in California last summer. This summer we'll probably hit 10. I would not be surprised if we hit $10 a gallon. And that is our moment. And that's what I talked about at Sipes. When these policy windows open, when the general public is fascinated by what's happening with gasoline and electricity prices, that's when we need to be there with a story and with our science. We have to be there with data. We have to show them that California, or just the United States in general, is the best place to produce really anything. I don't care if it's coal or something dirty. We are the best place to produce it because we actually have laws and regulations that tell us and guide us how to produce coal, how to produce oil, how to produce natural gas to protect the environment. And we're kidding ourselves if we think China or any of these other countries are doing that.
And so I guess if I was sitting at the table next to you and you're having this conversation with a couple of your California energy and science people here, let me take this off.
Yeah,
take this off the screen.
I wanted to pull up my blank page of our energy leaders, but we can talk about that.
Oof. Okay, that's a great segue. But let's talk about it. If I'm overhearing this, you're talking about the California production dropping, dramatically and still continuing to drop, and so I'm thinking if I was on the, if I was unaware of energy, I'd be thinking, well, that's good. This is good hearing that aligns with what we want to do as a nation. Okay, but what you're saying, how that impacts me as a consumer, well, first off, JP, that's going to drive up your cost of electricity. It's going to drive up your cost to whether it's charge your car, it's going to drive up your cost to refill your car or vehicle, whatever that is, heat your home, cool your home, number one. But number two, it also tells me that, yes, California is leading the way and dropping production. Yeah, I love it. But at the same time, we still need California and the nation still needs that needs those barrels of oil. And so what that means, we're just exporting what we're using to something that's a lot dirtier, that's a lot more that produces a lot more CO2, all those fun stuff that we don't like people always talk about, but it's much more of a heavier environment impact if it's outsourced and you put it on a tanker, then you ship the tanker with using dirty diesel. It sits on the port, messes up the marine wildlife. So anyway, so how it relates to the consumer would be it's going to affect the cost of my livelihood, and it's also going to impact the environment if what we're saying is true. That if I care about the environment.
And I think, and you alluded to it, what's not being discussed is how long this quote unquote transition is going to take. And obviously we believe we need all of it. We need more of it. But when you look into the government reporting, California has what's called the California Air Resources Board and the CARB. And what they do is every couple of years, they put out what's called a scoping plan. And the scoping plan basically reconciles, these are our greenhouse gas emissions targets. This is what we're trying to eliminate. We're trying to get to net zero by 2045, 2050. And this is how we're going to do it. It's just, what's the scope of this project? And what you find, if you see, they just came out with their most recent report in December of 2022. Pages 100 to 108, there's 8 pages in there that talk specifically about oil demand in California. Even if we get all our vehicles to be electric vehicles, even if we hit all of these targets, the plan recognizes that California still needs a significant amount of oil every day to operate. We're still going to have airplanes. We're still going to have cargo ships. We're going to have tanker ships moving now instead of crude product. Now we're talking about tanker ships bringing in refined gasoline, bringing in refined diesel, bringing in refined jet fuel. We're literally looking at how do we shut down the refineries in California and bring all this in. And what the scoping plan tells us is it's not possible for California to get off oil and gas by 2045, which is what they don't tell anybody in the general public, but it's in the plans.
But it's in the
That's
middle of the
point.
plans. It's in the middle of
It's in page 100 to 108 for someone like me that has to go dig in and research it because I'm into it. For someone at the coffee shop, they don't even know what a CARB scoping plan is. They've never heard of the California Air Resources Board, but that's what's dictating how we're making this quote unquote transition. So it's a really important point. And that goes back to when these policy windows open, we need to be there and have that page blown up and say, hey, general public, did you know, by the way, our government recognizes we will still need all of these products, yet they're telling you we're not going to produce them. And then the public can say, well, how are we going to bring them in? Well, we're going to need, in that little blurb, we're going to need 5 to 7 times more boats bringing in these products than we have today. And then everybody says, well, that doesn't sound very good. And you say, no, it's not very good because we're destroying the marine ecosystem. And 70% of this planet is water. So now we're just putting everything on a boat and we're going to destroy the 70% of the earth that we, have been trying to destroy for decades. But now we're just going to shift the destruction from on land in our domestic United States to the waters and these foreign countries. So now we're just going to foul everything other than the continental United States. Yeah. How good does that sound? It's ridiculous.
I mean, honestly, that's kind of a shitty way to do business.
It's awful.
It's a horrible way to do business. So let me ask you a question. So you're reading all this stuff, and obviously the energy facts are coming to light. They're rising to the surface. I would assume in your community and even wherever you travel, Bakersfield or not even Bakersfield, whether it's LA, San Diego. What's been the sentiment of people when they're seeing their? I guess you're in conversation with them about whether it's electricity, whether it's about hydrocarbons. What's been the sentiment recently about that since the the uptick in bills, electricity
people want to know. Everybody wants to know. Down here in San Diego, I talked to my parents about it. My mom says, I shared your energy facts chats with, Barbara, Sue, who all her friends, they're all walking the dog, bumping into people, talking about, wow, my bill was $1,000 this month. And why is this happening? And nobody knows because they're listening to the news. The news gets about 10% of the story accurate, and the other 90%, the real meat and potatoes of why the natural gas prices are so high in December, nobody's talking about. Nobody's talking about in the media that we had 30% gas inventories. But
it's also extremely frustrating too because whenever people are upset, whenever people's wallets are kind of put on the spotlight, it's people click on first off clickbait and they want someone to blame versus kind of understanding the situation. It's much easier to point the finger than kind of step back and say, okay, well, it's all work together. And I was actually scrolling through LinkedIn and it talked about New England's prices are about to go a lot higher too. And it was like, oh, this happened, and fossil fuels are to blame. And to me, that's such dangerous rhetoric because you're literally cutting off the life supply to your entire region of the country if you're just kind of shifting the blame on such a vital and abundant and reliable energy source.
That's their playbook. They don't care when prices get high or commodities get scarce because they then say that's why we need to get off of them.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about the reality that we will never be off of them. We will not be off of them in our lifetime, in our kids' lifetime, probably in our grandkids' lifetimes. We will not be off of these products.
But however, I mean, that also highlights, I guess, in the philosophical side of things, that's not a bad thing because and this is a different energy facts chat, and it's probably something to get someone else in on this, but I guess the benefits of what hydrocarbons does to our daily lives, it's kind of interesting. If I love, cool air and all that stuff, and I love, ACs, and I'm like, oh, we're going to phase out AC units by 2030 when there's nothing there to replace AC units, then what am I speaking about? I mean, it makes no sense. Unless
or when more people are installing AC units because they don't have them in San Francisco because they haven't needed them, but the climate's warming, so now they're going to get ACs. Oh, but now you don't want natural gas to fire the electricity grid, so now we're going to have an increased demand on the grid and nothing to power it. and
This
we're going to be in the dark and
and
hot or
and
cold.
and talking about kind of our industry's response and approach to things, whether you scroll through LinkedIn or Twitter or anything like that, and don't get me wrong, I love it.
Yeah.
It's there
Yeah.
are very camp mentalities, or it's very like,
Right.
well, you need us anyway. And for
Yeah.
me, I don't
Yeah.
think I think the most productive way to communicate our industry is number one, the as you said in the first slide, the humanitarian side.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
the silent acceptance side of it.
Right.
Like, hey, look, I know what you want, but at the end of the day, we're looking for silent acceptance.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So for me,
And we
it's
just saw, oh, go ahead.
I was saying.
I
So
had a
for me,
thought.
it's not the camp mentality. Hey, you need us. Hey, you need us. We like it or not, you need us, because that's just going to anger people that don't comprehend energy. I
Mm-hmm.
guess in its full realm, it's just going to push them to the side. Like, oh well, we
Mm-hmm.
need to move faster towards this end goal. So
Right.
for me, it's engaging in constructive conversations with people and
Yes.
focus on the
Yes.
humanitarian side of things, just like Chris Wright with Liberty, just like Toby Rice, just like
Right.
these industry leaders. There's a few of them that you have
Right.
on that slide right here.
I had,
But
well, there were none. It was a blank slide. And then, the exercise with the audience was, who are these leaders? Let's talk about it. And I stole Chris Wright early because he's probably one of the easiest. You mentioned Toby Rice. Someone mentioned Alex Epstein. I said he's a philosopher. We rely on these media personalities in a lot of cases, and we need to have our CEOs, our vice presidents, our corporate leaders discussing this because they actually understand how operations work in the field, supply and demand dynamics, the real finer points of the industry, and it's easy to throw stones at people that are just, Alex Epstein gets classified as a climate denier pretty quickly because he wants to talk about the benefits of fossil fuels, which there are many, but it's easy to just say, denier. And then he doesn't get any coverage
but
on
you can,
mainstream
but the
media.
things that you can accept climate change, but you can also accept the benefits. It's not one or the other, in my opinion.
Yes, and we need to talk about where we're sourcing these products. And what I was going to mention earlier, which is really exciting, there's a newly elected assemblywoman in Delano,
Yes.
California, Dr.
Yes.
Baines. She's a family doctor. She's
Dude,
a
I love her
Democrat.
picture. She's got the
She's got her coat on.
I love it,
She's
dude.
got the pumping unit behind her. That she is out there, and what she wrote a bill. She's newly elected. She's already on this topic that said California refineries need to source at least 50% of their crude from California by 2035. Brilliant. That's exactly what we need to be talking about. We don't need to be, and we can quote unquote jive with the other side. We can go to the environmentalists and say, okay, you want to phase out fossil fuels. What she's saying is, let's phase out the foreign stuff first.
Yes.
We know Iraqi children are dying of leukemia because they're flaring insane amounts of gas, 4 times the gas that California produces in 1 year. They're flaring in 4 years. They're flaring in 1 year. So they're flaring so much gas, these kids are dying. And we need to say, let's stop buying that product.
Well, Mike, I mean, I'm going to be I want to go back to the first slide, your vision board, kind of walk through those pictures. But real quick, if I'm sitting here saying, Mike, you just want this so you can operate, there's more to that. But first,
and I would agree with that. I would say yes. I want to operate. Yes,
you do want to operate, but there's another side of it, which is you have a background in environmental, whatever, master's environment. You have a background in this, so it's not just a question. Yeah, I want to operate. I mean, you could probably go do something else. And then, if anything, this is a question. It's an environmental question right now. It's a community question right now. So, if you don't mind, can you go back to the your vision board, because I really do want to kind of take a look at the first few pictures in the last 7 minutes of this, so we can kind of
sharing.
Yeah, remember I have the absolute power.
Okay, you're in control.
So I kind of want to, because these pictures were so they're great points, and the last 7 minutes just kind of talk about each of these pictures, why they're on your vision board and all that fun stuff. So
let's start on the far right, the Yasuni National Park. Okay. Because this Ecuador over the past 4 or 5 years has become the #1 source of crude oil to the state of California, because California refineries are designed to take heavy crude because California oil fields produce heavy crude. So they've been built this way going back 100 years. So why are we going to Ecuador? Because Ecuador also produces heavy crude. So if you're shutting down California oil production, the case is clearly linked to say, now we're buying it from Ecuador. And the picture on the right, the big picture,
The waterfall?
is the San Rafael waterfall. That is what it looks like, or looked like, past tense, before the Ecuadorian government engaged communist China to build them a dam, a hydroelectric facility, under the guise of, guess what? Clean energy. Ecuador,
Right.
you need clean hydroelectric power. So now that there's a dam there, that waterfall no longer exists. Ecuador received 40,000 visitors a year just to look at that waterfall in the most biodiverse ecosystem on planet Earth. We are literally shutting down California oil production to buy it from the Yasuni National Park. Not only is it biodiverse, but there's also indigenous people there that have avoided human contact for millennia, right? And so now, like when I look at my lease, we do what's called a cultural survey to make sure there are indigenous artifacts out there, and we don't find any on our location. But think about that. There are living, breathing indigenous people trying to block the development of their rainforest. They don't have anything close to a cultural survey. If anything, they just stick their middle finger up at these indigenous people, and then they go clear pads, eliminate waterfalls, and drill in the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest.
Okay.
It's the definition of insanity. So that's our number one source of foreign oil right now as a state. And I would argue that maybe less than 1% of the California population understands that that is happening right now.
Okay.
And so moving to the left, you have Gavin Newsom. Right when he was elected governor, he went out to the Simric oil field. That's a picture of him at an oil seep because there's so much oil in California, it's literally seeping out of the ground.
Okay.
Now, Chevron mismanaged this site. They broke the frac gradient, and you've got an oil seep that shouldn't be there. But it's contained to the lease. And he can go out there and show, hey, I'm out here stopping Chevron. This lease is probably a 30-minute drive from the closest house. It's about an hour and 20-minute west of Bakersfield proper. It's contained within the oil field. And then below that is a spill into a river in the rainforest, which obviously fouls the drinking water for the people, fouls the ecosystem for the plant life, the animal life. So it just goes to show, by the industry being silent and not talking about these things, the government can go do a photo op, and then the LA Times will run this all over town.
Look at these irresponsible. Oh yeah, they don't care about. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so that's that slide. Now, one left is Iraq. Like I said, Iraq flares 4 times the volume of natural gas than we as a state produce in 1 year. So the BBC just came out
4 years.
4 years.
4 times the natural gas in 1 year as California does in 4 years?
That as we produce and consume in 4 years. It's an insane amount of flaring.
All right. Yeah.
Yes. The flaring in Iraq is off the charts. And oh, by the way, BP operates fields in Iraq. So don't tell me BP's doing anything for the climate. And that's part of this don't say oil issue is the big companies, they're going to misdirect you so that you don't go
beyond control.
Their oil fields in Iraq.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Iraq. So like I said, the kids are dying of leukemia. The BBC reported on it. Nobody's really picking up the story beyond that, which is insane. I don't understand why. And then California, like I said, every MCF of gas that we produce is consumed in the state, and it's transported via pipeline because California banned flaring in the 1930s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Flaring has not been. Now, there are flares that exist that, I don't understand how this works. There's emergency and temporary flaring, but it's very, very little in California. And if you go to the EIA data, it actually says 0 flaring in California.
You know,
So
for such a culture that loves farm to table and all
yeah.
that stuff, California is not farm to table energy.
Mm-mm.
It's
That's
not.
why I say buy local. It's from the food industry in California that for decades
Oh
has been
yeah,
telling us buy local.
buy
We
local,
need to do the
support
same
local.
thing with our energy products. It's
I
no
completely
different.
agree. Okay, so
And
so
so
not
the
so they're flaring. Then they have to pipe it, put it in barrels, then put it on a diesel tanker, ship it halfway around the world, sit in the port, get unloaded, get refined, then we can use it. Versus plug and play.
plug and play, and that's the far left. Clean pipes in California versus dirty ports. The number one source of pollution in Southern California is the port complex of LA and Long Beach. Nobody talks about the port. We expand the port. We build it so we can bring in more cargoes, more tankers, because like we know, it's not an energy transition, it's addition, and we're adding it at the port. So now all these ships can sit 12 miles off the coast in international waters. That's not that far, burning particulate matter, bunker fuel, spewing SOx, spewing NOx, and then obviously the wind blows onshore. 12 miles is not a long way.
No.
And so what happens is you've got the dirtiest polluter in the state is that port, and nothing is being done to regulate it. Nothing.
Well, that's a NIMBY mentality if I've ever heard one, and that's kind of one of the things that we're kind of trying to combat against right now. Look, we need energy. Let's source that local. Let's support not just for national America, but also for the sense that it just makes sense.
I keep that up? I pulled it. Sorry.
You actually had some other pictures. Actually, I'll tell you what. We're at 30 minutes right now. Let's kind of let's dive into the rest of the conversation at the next energy facts chat. So
yeah.
And the thing is though, to kind of wrap this up, Mike, I've had discussions like JP, look, this is extremely important in my life, but why would people in New England or Texas or wherever want to hear about this? Because you said something that's, I thought it was extremely interesting. At the end, you said, what Gavin Newsom does, whatever California does, it gets implemented worldwide. And you concluded saying, hey, if you don't, and people laugh at that,
right.
People laugh at that, but you're like, okay, well, if that's so funny, at the end you said, hey, look, well, Europe, EU just banned all sales of ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles, by 2035. Right. And I also saw yesterday that New Jersey, following California's lead, is doing the exact same thing. So what's happening in your neck of the woods? It's not NIMBY. That's going to affect everything. So it's not just in your backyard. It's in everyone's. It's in the America's backyard when it comes to energy, and also the environment, as being environmental stewards. So Mike, keep up the good fight, and you can also link up with Mike and check out his Californians for not his, but the group of that he's putting together, the Californians for Energy and Science. And Mike, what's that website?
It's www.energyandscience.com. 3 words, energyandscience.com.
I signed up, and several other. Are you getting a lot of people signing up? And look, I'm not in California, but I think the information is great. It's very relevant. It's very timely too. And I think all the support we can do as an industry is definitely going to help the energy situation, not just in our industry, but just through random, people's homes, everyone's homes.
Right. And yeah, anybody's welcome to sign up, and they should, because we're showing you the playbook on how all this rolls out. And would you rather be prepared for it, or would you rather wake up in New Jersey and say, oh, wow, I don't get an internal combustion engine anymore? Or would you rather wake up in Texas and say, oh, wow, the EPA is shutting down flaring in the Permian? Or, oh, wow, the EPA is not going to give us another water disposal well in the Permian Basin. That's coming to the Permian Basin. It's coming.
And then the blind side to be like, well, how did this happen?
Right.
When this
you wake up one day, oh, what's going on? Yeah, you're going to be shut in just like California. It's going to be no different. And people are laughing about it because it sounds ridiculous that another state can have so much influence on your state, but it's absolutely spot on.
And I've noticed through the conversations with you over the last week, we've been around people on stuff. Whenever you mention something like that, it's always at first met with laughter. Like, oh,
it's a nervous laugh, right?
It's a nervous laugh. It's a nervous laugh. And then you deliver kind of your reasoning and thoughts behind it. The next thing you know, people are kind of start listening. Their ears start perking up, because it is, you know, people say, you know, don't California my Colorado, don't California my Texas. There's a reason for that, because people are, so policies don't just stay by geographical lines. So,
no, they
anyway,
spread like a disease. Yeah, it's bad. But that's why we're doing this, is to show people in other parts of the country, hey, come join us, fight it on the front lines here in California, and then you'll be ready when it comes to you.
Bro, should we change this to energy vax chats? Should we give everyone their energy vaccine so they understand what's going on?
We might get canceled if we do that. I know,
seriously. You can't say that word. But anyway, Mike, I appreciate your time this morning. I know it's look, it's a day off. It's President's Day, but you know what? Energy doesn't stop on weekends or holidays. So, man, I appreciate, obviously appreciate hanging with you last week, and I appreciate your time right now. And again, get involved, and thank you for tuning in to Energy Facts Chats. Help spread the word. We're just trying to bridge energy expectations, realities over here. So stay tuned. Feel free to share, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. See ya.